Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Triathlon Magazine Canada and our This Triathlon Life podcast. My name is Kevin Mackinnon. I'm the editor of Triathlon Magazine Canada. I am here with, in order of good-lookingness, Lisa Bentley, Barrie Shepley, and Phil Wrochna. Yeah, sorry, Phil. I'm just throwing you under the bus.
That's all right, Kevin. Thanks very much, mate. Lovely to see you. And also, I'm just going to start by saying I'm going to defer to the legends that you have assembled here. I'm merely sitting on wheels this evening, buddy.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Well, there was a lot of that in yesterday's race. Let's get to all of that. We are talking Olympics. Barrie, you were commentating for CBC. Your thoughts on what you saw in the Olympics yesterday?
Well, there was a couple of very interesting things. I think the very first thing that I thought of is the loss of Ali Brownlee, how he impacted that race. And the water temperature at 30 degrees turned the swim into a massive soup. And instead of seeing a differentiation in that swim, we literally saw 44, 45 men come out of the water, one after the other with no break. Some of that, I think, was a tremendously hot swim. Some of that was no Richard Varga, no Ali Brownlee, the two generals who get to the front end of those swims and force people to go outside of their comfort zone. And when you came out of the water with that many men close together, there was that small break short on, but you knew that it was never going to stay away with the Norwegian train eventually coming. And so for me, there was first obvious thing was no Ali Brownlee. When that guy's not in a race, things come out differently. And I think, his younger brother, Johnny, had a solid race for him to kind of probably end his Olympic career. But not having his big brother in the race, he never races quite the same.
Yeah. Lisa, your thoughts on what you saw yesterday?
I'm thinking the same thing that Barrie said about no Ali Brownlee. It changes the dynamic. He has so much power, whether he wins the race or not. Granted, if it's an Olympics, he's probably winning the race, but because he rises to every occasion. But he really does change the dynamic, and he's, the personal domestique for as well for Johnny. The two of them together pack a really powerful punch. And I also think we see really the changing of the guard, the new generation. I mean, for so long we saw Vincent Lewis and Mario Mala and those guys at the front just so dominant. And we all asked ourselves the question, would they ever lose? They just were always at the top in those World Series events. And now we see the Alex Ease and Wild from New Zealand. Blumenfeld, I mean, he just hammered that race, and he's just a shout out to the Norwegian way of training. I mean, that really, there's going to be so many people now talking about what are they doing in Norway. And for the past year, I've heard about what they're doing in Norway, and now people are going to be listening and trying to emulate that again. And we see that after time in the cycle of triathlon.
Phil, I saw one of your tweets about it just turning into a typical Olympic bike ride. I was really surprised that I didn't see Christian Blumenfeld and the Norwegians sort of hammer away to the front of that bike. They were all quite happy. Everyone was quite happy to follow the Matthew Sharp train around. Your thoughts there? Where were your Aussie dudes pushing the pace? Oh, yeah, that's right. They don't.
Yeah, well, look, it was a bit of a miserable day for the Australians. A couple of things that did leap out to mind for starters, though. For starters, the swim, as you said, Barrie, what was that boat doing? What was the boats doing? The black boat that kept with the double twin. I was getting anxiety watching how close that thing was getting. The second part was that ride too. It was really 17 corners, very technical. It just lacked something, didn't it? Those boys got away at the start, and then everyone started to bridge up, and I'm like, as soon as it got to that point, and all bets were off, weren't they? I mean, again, I'll defer to the knowledge in the room here, but it certainly looked like at that point that ride was everyone was just sitting up going, well, okay, this is going to be a running race.
Well, yeah, I thought that there might be, Schomburg, who's notorious for trying to get away. To me, I thought there were a few athletes who didn't take advantage of their strength. Clearly Blumenfeld felt enough confidence in his run and proved himself at the end of the day that, look, I am not just a biker. I mean, I'm a ridiculously fast biker, but I'm not just a biker. And, Norway had 3 men in the top 12. So all 3 of those guys ran, well, when you look at the fact that they're ahead of people like Javier Gomez and Jacob Burtwhistle and others at the end of the day. So they had enough confidence in all three of their skills that once they got to that lead group, they didn't have to do much more. I think you're going to see personally in the women's race later on today that there will be a breakaway and it will stay away. And Flora Duffy and some of the women who really, really are technically better than others will be able to take advantage of that bike course. But it was, for me, it was not a particularly exciting bike ride. You could see guys waving at the camera, taking a drink, waiting for the run. And with the heat and humidity, nobody really wanted to overextend themselves. The young kid from Luxembourg took off for his television time, but it was clear he was going to get his 2 minutes and be back inside of the pack. So the great riders who usually have the courage, like a Brownlee, weren't there. Martin Van Riel looked like he was hungry for somebody to go, but couldn't find anybody who wanted to make that commitment. And so, I was surprised that a few of the people who know that I can't run under 30 minutes, certainly in the heat, didn't say, look, my only chance is to get 2 or 3 of us to get away. And so I think some people didn't have the courage to get away. And then a few of the guys who had the ability, like Blumenfeld, said, look, I biked hard for 19 minutes. I got myself into the lead group. And that's all I need to do at this point. I'm going to back myself, on the run. Hayden Wild is a great rider, but clearly he felt I could do this on the run if I have to. And so people started to look around. I was impressed a few times to see Alex Yee on the front end of the chase pack. Here's the kid who in my mind is the best runner in the sport. And, he looked a little bit like an Ali Brownlee saying, look, I'm going to, even though I'm the best runner, I'm going to get to the front end of this pack and do some work. So it was impressive for me to see Alex Yee not sitting in 30th spot waiting to hope the pack caught up.
Well, but he certainly showed that, I think, in Leeds, right? Like he was driving that chase pack in Leeds. And, I thought in Leeds it was, hey, I'm going to show these guys that I can't just run. Lisa, what were your thoughts? Like, I sort of had this feeling like that breakaway group could have done it if they could have convinced everyone to work. And as you were talking about, like, and Ali Brownlee from watching him move up to the long distance, you sort of felt like, yeah, if Ali was there, he would have been the general telling everyone to get their butts and move. Like, and I love Tyler Misachuk, but he was at the back of that pack, not taking a pull at all. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was a huge factor in the race.
It's as if people came to the race with their strategy already in place and they weren't able to change it quick enough. And they had already ruled out, this is how it's going to happen for me. And there wasn't a plan B or plan C that they went to. And that was, if Ali Brownlee had been there, I think there would have been some organization. I think he would have rallied the troops and he's like, let's get out of here. I think, yesterday's race will really affect the women's race today because the women have seen what happened. And now they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the new plan because we don't want it to come down to, to that running race. That's where it really came down to. It was as if, like, it just felt to me as if people couldn't pivot in time. Like there were some amazing runners that didn't run as well as we would have historically thought they could have. And so it was as if they said, oh, it didn't work out the way I thought, and here I am. Of course it doesn't happen that way, but the subconscious is an incredible thing. So I think last night's race is really going to impact the women's race. There's going to be a little bit more tactics involved. There's going to be some strategies. There's going to be some women talking today that we have got to, we want to break away, or maybe there's the people that say, no, I don't, I'm going to be Blumenfeld. I'm going to be Yee. And so they're going to come up with their strategies today, having seen what happened in the men's race.
Well, Lisa, I'm going to counter you on that. I agree with you from the perspective that I think the tactics, I have no belief at all that the top 3-4 swim women are not thinking a week ago, 2 weeks ago that, I don't want to come off in a 45 woman run. And I've got to believe that those 3 or 4 or 5 outstanding swimmers like Maya Kingma, Jessica Learmont, they have always planned to go off the front and not want to see anybody else for the rest of the day. But I think last night reinforced, hey, that strategy, like, we got to take it up 2% more, even more than we had anticipated. And the real question will be those 1 or 2 people. For example, had Blumenfeld been just a better swimmer, he would have been in that lead group of 9, and that would have driven that train. But when he was in the chase train, then suddenly, you're moving. And, when you saw Polyansky, you saw Tyler in the lead bunch, and neither of them are renowned for their biking. So you had 2 or 3 people in that lead group that were not contributing to it going any faster. Vincent Lewis tried a few times to get, pull it faster. Johnny Brownlee went to the front a few times, but there just wasn't enough horses that were committed in that lead bunch. And I'm like, guys, this is the Olympics. Like, why not, lay out 105% instead of 95%? Because when you get caught, you're now adding some extra horses. And I looked after I got home. It was, crazy doing the live stuff. You kind of start losing. Where did someone come out of the water? Hayden Wild was well back out of the water, well back if you look at where his swim split was. So if they had left him in the dust, there's an Olympic medal that doesn't happen. But he is, fortuitous that lead bunch did not commit fully, and suddenly he's into the Norwegian train, gets a ride to the front, and we know what he can do on the run based on his last couple of years. So, kudos to those who made the most of their day, and those who had that swim off the start and didn't take full advantage of it. Well, I'm sure they're kind of going to be doing second guessing today.
I'm curious though, Kevin, sorry about the course, and people said it was a couple of the athletes I saw in the interviews post race saying how tough it was. I looked at it, and with the 17 corners and it wasn't like a Rio course, was it? It really was. It struck me more like a London sort of setup where it was just very, very. So knowing the test event, knowing what's coming, I mean, how much preparation, guys, would you think you would need to do in order to, make a fist of it? If you land yourself in that top bunch, I would have thought you would have gone full road racer, and just gone, what, like you're saying, Barry, I'm going to bury myself for this 40 and see what happens versus running into 30th. How much did the course play in what happened today?
I'm with you, Phil. Like, to me, I don't understand why Johnny Brownlee isn't like just, because we learned in Leeds, he's not going to run with Alex Yee. So, his chance of medaling again at the Olympics was totally based on those guys getting away. And Schomburg as well. I was really surprised that he wasn't blasting at the front. But as Lisa said, it seemed like they were, they had stuff in their head as. So, and traditionally in the Olympics, you've got 40 to 50% are in a lead group on the bike, right? So
you could have even seen, a 3-man if you put Schomburg and Vincent and Martin Van Riel and maybe a 4th in that lead bunch of 9. I think what happened was they went to the front. They didn't just commit fully. And those 3 started looking around for guys 5, 6, 7 to start to contribute. They really didn't. And what you will not see in the women's race, in my estimation, is any hesitation. Maya and Jessica and 2 or 3 others will say, if it's a 2-woman break, it's a 2-woman break. If it's a 4-woman break, it's a 4-woman break. They're going to not worry about, well, did the 8th person contribute? Like, let's get rid of the 8th person. Let's get rid of the 9th person, and let's narrow it down to 3 or 4 who are committed to emptying the tank. And I think that when Johnny looks back and when a few of the others look back, they're going to say, you know what, we should have made it a smaller group of 3 or 4, overly driven the first 2 minutes, got rid of a few of the guys who would have got driven back into the chase pack. And then you would have seen this excitement probably for at least 5 or 6 laps of, can that group of 4 hold off the Norwegian train? Maybe they can, maybe it would have been the same outcome by the end. But at the very least, you wouldn't have seen, 40 guys rolling around for 5 or 6 laps. And I think that's where Vincent's going to look back and say, man, that medal I wanted, I let go in the first 2 minutes. Johnny's going to say the same thing, et cetera. And I was impressed with Johnny's running because, it was hot. He's not renowned for running well in the heat, and he hung tough in there, right up into to the finishing line to come in the top 6.
I really want to talk about the women's race. I do want to just bring up a couple more things on the men's race. One, can anyone on this planet hurt more than Christian Blumenfeld?
No,
I thought Lisa Bentley was the winner on that category. But Lisa, I'm sorry, you just got trumped big time.
I know.
Phil, I know you commented on Twitter about throwing up on the finish line. That sort of said it all to you.
Yeah, I mean, like, we've seen Lisa empty the tank so many times. It was like we were just waiting for it when we watched you race, Lisa. It was just like, well, okay, here it goes, the Bentley blast. But the Blumenfeld blast was ridiculous because, and you could see it, man. You could just see that last bit. For me, today was all about the last 5Ks. The last, 15, 16 minutes of that race was where it all was. It was all sort of, as we've said. But when he committed, and Lisa, you'd be able to talk to this probably better than the three of us, quite, I would have thought. But when you commit, there is no, you at that level and at that point, you cannot turn around. And you, as Phil Liggett always used to say on the old cycling commentary, just don't turn around, just keep going.
Blumenfeld was spectacular. There's no, I mean, I'm watching that thinking he's going to blow any second. and he had it in his head. That was mind over matter. That was guts, pure determination. And that's what I love about the Olympics. Like, I don't care what your resume says. I don't care what your 10K PB is. I don't care how beautiful of a runner you were as a youth, etc. It comes down to that guts and determination. And he just turned it on. And that was like the Lionel Sanders equivalent, really. That was just going with guts. And I just applaud him like that. Really brilliant. And he was so surprised. He was just pushing it right to the end. And yeah, it was amazing for him to have that event. So of course I salute that, because I always say that I ran on a lot of guts and not a whole lot of talent, and so I aligned myself. Although he's got a lot of talent, it was brilliant, and I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for the women, to be quite honest, because a lot of women might be sitting back going, yeah, I mean traditionally I'm not one of the best runners, say, or we're not one of the best at X, Y, or Z, and they're like, hey, I've got a chance. I just have to get in there and hurt and push and not look back. Like, you can't look back. There's plenty of time for that. They're all doing it today.
Lisa, you said what was on my mind, which was, when I'm watching it, I'm thinking there is a short course animal who can hurt like nobody else, and there's a long course. And Lionel Sanders and Christian Blumenfeld remind me of, two not pretty looking running forms. Technically, they may not be brilliant, but they find some place to go into a dark location and just keep, grinding and grinding and grinding. And the two of them remind me, I mean, obviously they're different ends of the spectrum in terms of speed, but very similar mentality of, and we've seen Christian, I probably announced now 30 of his races, and he races the exact same way. And, in the early days, he would do it until about 7K, and then Mario Mola would go by him, or Vincent, and then it was to 8K. But you just knew that this guy is going to just, have the capacity at one point to just keep 8K to 10K. And, he's now had 3 wins this year. He's the best male athlete on the planet at the shorter distance, with his 2 short course wins before the Olympics and now the Olympic Games. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him carry that confidence, into the last half of the season.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin, just to jump you there, Kevin, does this not underline how good a single day world championship is? Sorry, this is soapbox.
Hey, we're with you on this 100%, Phil. I think all of us would love to see that. But I also, as I've said many times, I love the fact that, the world championships, it makes all of those races exciting and meaningful.
Sure.
So one last thing on the men's race, and then I do want to do a little preview on the women's. Tyler Mislachuk basically apologizing at the finish line yesterday. I don't know, Lisa and Barrie. I don't think the dude needs to apologize for anything personally. But your comments on that.
He put himself in a position to have a great race. He did all the work. He won the test event. He's been on he's been on a tear. He's been at the races. He's been performing consistently, which is not easy to do on the World Triathlon Series circuit. So he's been on our horizon for a couple of years now. And that's all anyone can ask, is that you put yourself in a position to win. This is a race, and you've got to be making split-second decisions. And he did that on the day, and we have to trust that with his experience and his coaching, the influence of his coaching and his training, that he did what he could do on the day. If they reran the race today, it'd be different. It'd be a whole different setup, given, if everyone rests and everything, and the decision might have been a tiny bit different. There's nothing to apologize for. That's sport.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Lisa. He's been on the road for 14 months, haven't been home because of the pandemic, living in the States and away from home, and different beds from Hawaii to Phoenix to Alabama. So he's made, like all of those athletes, massive, sacrifice. He executed spectacularly in the water. He was where he needed to be.
Absolutely.
So here he was many years ago, not a great swimmer, got the job done there. I think when he has time to reflect with the people around him, there was no need for an apology. And those apologies have come up over the years. Hamish Carter did it when he didn't execute in Sydney way back in 2000. Because the Olympics, what I love about the Olympics is also the thing that I hate about the Olympics. Today, 3 athletes are happy and 12 to 15 are absolutely beside themselves because they didn't come home with a medal. I mean, tell me, the 15th best dentist in the world or the 15th best, hairdresser or whatever. I mean, that's where Tyler finished. Now, he has, I bet you, a very different feeling today. He was 15th 5 years ago and came away elated from Rio. That 15th today, because there was high expectations personally on him and lots of the media because of, everybody blows up. I'm sure Jacob Birtwistle is feeling like I didn't get the job done today. And I'm sure Mario Mola and others, are having that same feeling. And so the thing that I dislike about the Olympics, I love the vibe in the 3 days before, because everyone believes they're going to be on the podium. At least 20 men do. And then when they don't, they feel they've let their coaches down, they've let their country down, they've let their sponsors down. And that's something that as sport we have to look back on and say, what are we doing that's giving that wrong message to these athletes? They've committed incredible sacrifices. They've gone out and put themselves in front of the world, to do their job under a microscope. They've just come to the top 12 or 15 in the world. And they're leaving feeling like they've let people down. And, Tyler is a phenomenal athlete. Matt did his job to help him. Those two guys sacrificed for the last 5 years and certainly the last 14 months. There's zero reason for feeling you let anyone down. But that's the thing I don't like about the day after the Olympics, because there's people that I've let you down. How did you let me down? You entertained me for 2 hours. You gave me the best you had. And that's all I can ask from you. So I agree with Lisa. There's zero reason for him to be feeling bad about it today.
Yeah, no, and I've started to feel like things were derailing a bit for the Canadians towards the end of the bike. Like Matt, the last few races, Matt has been able to be right at the front, and Tyler's been right on his wheel. I think I don't know if you guys, well, I know you did, Barrie, Huatulco, however I'm supposed to pronounce that. And Matt literally rode into transition to make sure that Tyler got there first. So. But I sort of joked on Twitter. I think Christian wants to become an honorary Canadian because he took over Matt's wheel, and like you could see that he was like, "Yeah, we're not letting that game happen here. We know their plans, so sort of change things around." Okay, Phil, I want to talk to you. I think today's women's race, as Lisa and Barrie have both talked about a few times, going to be very different. You're going to get your real bike ride. You're going to get your cyclists. Is Flora Duffy, Maya Kingma, I think Taylor Knibb possibly in that mix, but can she swim fast enough? Anyway, Phil, your thoughts on the women's race, and then I'll open it up to Lisa and Barrie.
Look, I'm excited by this, and I agree with Lisa. I think the women's road race and the men's road race were two different things as well. And we saw a lot more consolidated, bigger effort on the break. I think they go to school on what happens. And that's what's going to happen. The women would have seen what happened today and thought, you know what, we can actually get away and there's an opportunity, etc. I am the worst person to tip results. I've successfully destroyed myself in the last 3 Olympics. I'm horrifying. I was the one who said Gwen Jorgensen had no chance. I deserved everything I got on Twitter for that. I deserved it, 100%. But look, I like Spirig. I just something about what she's been up to is leaping out. Now I saw the photo and I get it. Everyone looks at. We've all been to Kona, right? Everyone looks $1 million before race day, right? But there's something, I don't know. There's something that's sitting in my head that says Spirig is in really strong form, and I think she's the sort of athlete too with Sutton, etc., who've looked at this and they've just gone, you know what, there's a bit of swagger about those guys, how they get around, and I think she's going to be saying, you know what, you can get out, and you can do this and destroy. And he has this ability to put that into their heads, these athletes, of what you are able to do. He would have been sitting there today with pen and paper, no doubt, going through every single thing, going, you can do this. So Kev, I'm on the Spirig train at the moment. In fact, I tweeted her today to say that I believe you shall win. And then I almost said to her, that could be the worst thing you've heard all day. But You know what? But there's the one day you've got to be able to get it right for 2 hours every 4 years. Like, it's a phenomenal thing. I mean, as a crappy athlete, I was no good at it. Clearly, Lisa, you were phenomenally good at it, just being able to peak on the right day at the right time. It's such a chance thing. You're 0.5% off, you lose, you're 0.5% on your win. It's amazing. But Spirig, that's where I'm sitting for the moment, guys.
So is Nicola Spirig pregnant again? She's been pregnant for her last 2 Olympic medals. So
I know.
It does. I mean, look, clearly it does well, right? So, but yeah, who can tell? I hope we're going to get some fast racing.
I'm on the Spirig train with you, to be honest. She brings that incredible amount of experience, which clearly is important. And again, she's watching that men's race, and she's been in it all. Like, she knows how to react. Like, there was a point when I was racing where eventually I said, I can handle any curveball that comes, because I don't think there's a curveball I haven't had. I've been close to the front. I've been double digits behind. I've lost my nutrition. I've had all these things happen. I don't think there's anything that hasn't happened. And I feel like Nicola has that in her repertoire now, which is not something that most Olympians have. So she has that. And she's also proven time and time again that she's fast, that she still has it, which is incredible. And you don't leave your home in a pandemic, go to Tokyo, having a family with 3 kids, unless you're serious. So I think she brings that to the course. Now it's who's going to go with her, who's going to be with her. I think Flora Duffy's, one tough nut, and I think she's got that experience. And I think we're going to see a breakaway. It is going to be just an absolutely gutsy race, but and Nicola has those guts that have been put in her for the last 2 decades.
So, Barrie, are you with me that you're seeing a Flora Duffy breakaway and Nicola bringing the train back up to them, possibly?
Well, that's going to be, I think, the excitement of the race for me today, which, first of all, I have Nicola in my top 5, in my personal top 5. The greatest female short distance triathlete ever, in my experience. And I honestly believe, had she decided to make a career at long distance, she would have been rivaling for the greatest ever times, literally.
She's going after sub-8 next year.
Well, I mean, she's done a spectacular marathon at the European Championships. She is an unrelentless biker, and better than an average swimmer when you look at long distance racing. So, for me, it's just because of the family commitments, it was easier to go short course. I agree with Phil from the perspective of the Swiss, like Max Dutter, who is also in the same training squad that Nicola's in, had a great race yesterday, and he was been showing for the last 6 months that Brett's had him in a very good place. So you can never argue against a combination of Nicola going into Olympic Games. I'm going to stay on the theme, however, of changing of the guard, as we saw on the men's side, and I think after 5 Olympic Games, I think Nicola is going to be absolutely brilliant. She's going to empty the tank. She's going to be top 5. I don't know that I see her winning this thing, because I do believe what's going to happen is that group of 3 or 4 women, Georgia Taylor-Brown, Maya Kingma, and then the question is, does a Taylor Nib make it into the elite bunch right off the bat, and does Flora Duffy? Because if Flora makes it into the elite group, then I don't see that 3 or 4 ever being caught. I think they will have the courage to be relentless. If Flora's swim is a little further back, then that's the Norwegian train that starts to pull a whole bunch of other people up. And now, the French young athlete Cassandra and others who are great runners maybe get an easier ride to the front end of this thing. But Nicola's going to go to the front end of her train, and you're going to see Maya and Jessica and maybe Flora on the front end of their train. And now you get this awesome experience of 2 sets of relentlessly tough riding cyclists to say, do I have the ability to catch you, or do I have the ability to stay ahead of you? The swimmers know that they can control the swim, and they're going to try, I think, after watching what happened yesterday, not let that soup slow them down, go off the front, make the break. I'm sure they'd love to tag in a Lucy Charles into here to try to bring that swim just a little further up ahead the road. But Nicola's going to be fighting it out potentially for a medal, and she's going to be chasing down some swim bikers. But she looks great. I've seen the pictures. When I talked to her a couple of years ago in Montreal, I didn't realize how close she was to making the Sydney Olympic team. Like, she probably was just 6 months away from being old enough and strong enough to make that Sydney team, and she would be the only person to ever have gone to all 6 Olympics. At this point, she's the only person to have gone to 5. And I mean, she's just incredible. There's nothing more that you can say. And, you know, if you wanted to do the mic drop, the greatest thing ever would be win the race, you know, today and drop the mic and go off to her sub 8 and then have a statue put up someplace in Switzerland, you know, that would be the greatest way to end this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think, well, it sounds to me, bottom line is we're in for an exciting race. And we haven't even talked, like, I think there's a chance we see a Great Britain sweep, you know, with, you know, if they can somehow figure out that breakaway. The word is Flora Duffy is in phenomenal run shape right now. Everyone I've spoken to who's been running with her down in Boulder is like, she is on fire. So I think she's actually happy if this comes down to a run as well, like Christian Blumenfeld, which I'm still trying to shake my head over. All right, guys, thank you so much. I could do this for the rest of the morning, but we do need to call it right now. Phil Wrochna, thank you so much for joining us from down under. Have a good night's sleep. Have a great rest of your day, Lisa and Barrie. And I hope you guys are all up for doing this again in just under 24 hours, and we will recap our women's race.
We'll see you tomorrow, Kev.
Thanks,
okay, thank you so much.
Bye.